Hey guys, this is IXRolloutIX with BIONICLE 2015 Toa Kaita Akamai, Master of Valor. For those unaware, the Kaita in the original series were combination models made up of 3 Toa. There were 2 of them in particular, Akamai, made up of Tahu, Pohatu, and Onua, and Wairua, made up of Liwa, Gali, and Kopaka. This here, of course, is Akamai, or at least a Gen 2 reimagining of the combination. Now, I'll preface this by saying this is not an official combination model. This is a MOC. Second, it is not my MOC, per se. I can only take about 20% of the credit for this, because I heavily modified it, and I'll explain that here in a second. Now, I have 2 sets of the 2015 Toa, and since I got the second set, I had every intention of making new versions of the Kaita. The problem being, I am absolutely not a construction mocker. I build with system, and I build at a very small scale. So, not construction in any way. I haven't built a Bionicle MOC in ages, and I've never built a CCBS MOC, so I didn't even want to attempt it on my own. I've seen a handful of really good Kaita MOCs, but only a single one, in all honesty, has really impressed me, and that's what this guy is based off of. A user named Ixvia on Imager and Reddit made a Imager gallery and then linked to it on Reddit, and there I found it. He actually made instructions for his model, and I think it looks fantastic. Obviously, I built it up using those instructions. Links for everything will be in the description, but I did heavily modify it to sort of fit my tastes. I'll go over what I modified in more detail as we go through the video, but I just wanted to give credit where credit is due. With all of that said, let's take a look at this guy. So I wasn't sure if I was going to upload this video to my first channel or this channel. Obviously, I decided on the latter, but I show off LEGO Creations over there, and this sort of fits that bill, but I do Bionicle reviews over here, so I wasn't sure. The only reason I'm bringing this up is because this video is going to be a lot more casual than my normal Bionicle reviews, because it's not really a review. I'm just showing off a cool creation. So let's get started. Starting with the legs, of course. They're very big and bulky, almost like 2 legs put together. Very similar to the original Kaita, and I really like that. Now, one thing I really wanted to sort of implement in my changes to Ixvia's original design was like a segregation between colors and specific elements from the individual models that make it up, if that makes any sense at all. Basically, if you look at the original Kaita, they're made up of much simpler models. The 2001 Toa's limbs were single pieces, so when you looked at the limbs that they combined into on the Kaita, it was very clearly like the upper leg is made out of Onua's arms and legs, and the lower leg is made out of Pohatu's legs, you know? You could see that, and I sort of wanted that to show through here. So you can see, like, Pohatu's legs are, like, obviously here, or Pohatu's arm, or Pohatu's limb, whatever, and then Onua's limb here, then Onua's feet, Pohatu's feet, and then the upper leg is Tahu, and that kind of segregation is all throughout the model, you'll see. Again, I really do like these legs. I changed this to be red because, well, his upper leg is already red. That was silver, I think, on the original model. I sort of slimmed things down here. There was some extra armor that I just felt was unnecessary. It made his legs look a bit too bulky, and honestly, I don't think the exposed ball joints look too bad here. At least it's not like an open ball joint, you know, it's within the bone piece. So again, I think it looks fine. We'll go over articulation and everything else a bit later, but I'm just sort of showing off the construction here. Moving on up to the body. Now, this is where I changed the majority of things on this model. It's in the torso. I basically moved this whole section up and then brought it out a bit, so things end up looking actually quite a bit different from the original model. I also had to change a lot of things to make it work. I also changed a lot of the colors here. You can see this is primarily silver down here, whereas it wasn't in the original model. I added some extra armor down here because when I brought the torso up, that looked a little bit bare, so I added sort of the what was it? Invasion from Below foot piece from Onua's hammer down there, and I think that looks pretty good. I really like the Onua claws or Onua shoulder pads as skirt armor. I think that looks fantastic, and they're attached to hands here, so they're on ball joints that get out of the way pretty well. I think that looks great, but again, with the segregation, with the separation of elements here, you can see that his torso is pretty much made out of Onua and Pohatu parts. There's not a whole lot of Tahu going on here. And then when we switch to the back here, it's pretty much all Tahu, with the golden sword sticking up out of the back, the red back here. The red was actually on the front on the original model, and the silver was back here. So I switched that to make it match a little bit more. Now, one other big change I did as far as the back goes is I cleaned things up a little bit. I actually gave him like wings back here because, well, the original model didn't have the swords back here. It had these ball joints just sticking out. I didn't like that at all. These armor pieces weren't here. This ball joint was exposed. Instead, he had like a mounting point up here so you could have the sword rest on his back, and I'll explain why I didn't like that when we look at the sword itself. But things needed to change towards the back, in my opinion, so I did that, and I think it looks great. Like, they're obviously not wings meant for flight, but they look pretty cool with like the sword back here and sort of flames jetting out of the side. I like the way that looks. Obviously, you can see gears back here. He does have a couple of functions, and we'll go over those later as well after we take a look at articulation. The shoulders look fantastic. I love how all of the armor fits together here. This is something that sort of carries over from the original model, but it also works a little bit better because I raised the torso up a little bit. He also had a couple of the new armor pieces up here. I felt that made it look a little bit bulky, and when all is said and done on my modified model here, his shoulders are much more slim. Along with that color separation, I also really wanted to slim the model down a bit. I understand Akamai is meant to be like this powerful warrior, but I feel in a lot of ways, some people make him way too brutish. You know, he should be like a noble warrior, kind of like a knight, rather than like a barbarian or a brute. And so I slimmed him down in some places, made him maybe a little bit less armored. The arms are very, very simple, very similar to the legs here. You can see like red and gold there, and purple and gold, and it's got a similar style here in the arms. Friction extenders in the elbows and the shoulders here, because he definitely needs that to hold his giant sword. I also raised the shoulders up a little bit. The Hordika necks are oriented a little bit differently because, you know, I raised the body up, so might as well raise the shoulders. I guess the reason he had them down was because the body was further down, and I don't know. I just sort of didn't really like the look. What else? What else is there to look at here? Oh, the eye stalk. I decided to go with the trans neon green to sort of differentiate it from Tahu, because I chose to use the normal red mask because that's what the original combination model had, even though Akamai did have a gold mask in some of the animations and the game. The original models, what's nostalgic to me, Akamai had a red mask, but red mask with blue eyes, that's Tahu's. So red mask with green eyes, that is Akamai. And really that's about it as far as this guy is built. This video will be a bit longer, but you know, just stick around. I think it's pretty cool. And again, we're just going through this at a very casual pace. Alright, now let's go over his articulation. He doesn't have a whole lot of movement at the ankles here. You can't bring the feet down, but you can bring them fairly far forward, which does really well for keeping this guy upright. If you do try bringing the feet down, this sort of thing happens, and, well, that's no good. Now, the way things are attached with the limb pieces here, you can sort of bend some of these sections and actually get sort of a tilt out of his ankle, so that's cool if that's what you want to do. Fortunately, that's really all this ball joint is useful for. It doesn't give him a double jointed knee or anything. Speaking of the knee, it bends pretty far up here. He's got sort of short thighs in comparison to his long shins. It doesn't look too bad because you're not really going to have his knee bent this far in a lot of cases anyway, but it certainly is a thing. This armor here is probably the most obtrusive piece on this entire guy. It really does cause problems when bringing his legs up. And sort of causes problems with the knee here. This piece can fall off from time to time, but it doesn't happen too often. It's on a ball joint here, it's on a hinge, but I don't find you get much use out of that. In the hip here, his leg can't go out any further than this, but I feel like if it could go out any further, you'd have some stability issues, so maybe that's a good thing. You do have sort of a swivel there, and of course the leg can go forward and back. Again, things run into things up here. These hip armor pieces do get out of the way, thankfully, very well. Again, they're on ball joints here. Again, they're attached to the hands there. Similarly, the shoulder pads that are on ball joints attached to hands, and these armor pieces here are attached to ball joints as well, so that isn't a problem. You can get his arms out and forward and back without any issues. His elbows are on ball joints similar to Pohatu's arms so that they can bend and also rotate. And finally, his head is on a ball joint. It's also on a friction extender here. It does look a little bit weird when you bring his head up a little bit too far, and it is very stiff, but it works. It's not a double ball joint, but you can get some fairly good expression. This guy is extremely solid above all else, and I'm actually surprised he has as much articulation as he does because of how dense the build is. Finally, let's go over the weapons and the functions. First and foremost, he has this giant broadsword made out of Tahu's blades and Pohatu's little dagger here. Ixvia's had a couple of the boomerang pieces as like a hilt, and I felt that looked maybe a bit too busy. Especially since I think these spikes already sort of look like a hilt anyway. So I think it's fine as is, and a little bit more clean. Now, as I said earlier, there was a way to store this on the back here. It involved like a mounting point up there. The reason I didn't like that is because I see the Kaita as sort of a last-ditch effort, pulling out all the stops, a final weapon when the Toa have frankly dug themselves a ditch. So why would something like that need to store their signature weapon? I don't know, maybe it makes sense if he needs to have his hands free or use his secondary weapons more prominently, but I just don't like that idea. Anyway, actions speak louder than words. Let's attach this and let you soak that in, because it's a very big sword and it looks very, very cool. Now, as for a secondary weapon, simply enough, I just gave him Pohatu's boomerangs. I'm sort of going towards a Akamai Nuva route rather than the original Akamai. The original Akamai had like a hammer made out of skulls, which, well, that's badass, but there really wasn't any way of doing that with the rest of the pieces available. So let's just give him a boomerang and call it a day. Now, it does have a second boomerang, and you will notice that it's attached a little bit differently than it is on Pohatu. Usually that's just a pin. The reason I don't have a pin there is because, well, there'd really be no place for it to attach. It wouldn't really make much sense for it to attach to the bottom of his foot. So, the second boomerang here can be stored on his hip. Basically, you just take that pinhole and slide it over this exposed axle here. And you can do this for both of the boomerangs. Whoop, that fell off here. But I like to have him with the boomerang in one hand and the sword in the other. So, with that out of the way, let's talk about his functions. I could have given him a double gear function. In fact, I think the instructions would have you build him with a double gear function. But there is no way that those gears or this wrist joint is supporting this sword swinging. So I just limited it to a single gear function on this arm so that he can swing the boomerang in his offhand. Second, he does have a leg gear function here. I actually did add an extra gear up here so that it was a bit tighter than it was originally on Ixvia's, but yeah, he can walk just like the original Akamai could. It was silly back then, it's silly now, it's definitely optional, but it is there, and it's kind of fun. So yeah, there is the model in a nutshell. Albeit a very big nutshell. At the tip of the sword's, in fact, about exactly a foot tall. At the head, he's almost the exact same size as Akamai Nuva, for what that is worth. Once again, I urge you to go check out the model this was based off of. Again, I'll have links in the description for that. And if you like what you see, you can build it for yourself. For those interested, I do have a Wairua on the way, so stay tuned for that. Until then, that is about it, guys, and this is IX RolloutIX, signing off.